Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to install Asahi Linux on your Apple Silicon M1 Mac. You will be able to boot a native version of Linux and macOS on the same machine. We got a lot to cover. Let's jump in and get started. What is Asahi Linux? Asahi Linux is a project and community with the goal of porting Linux to Apple Silicon Macs, starting with the M1 Mini, MacBook Air, and MacBook Pro. Our goal is not just to make Linux run on these machines, but to polish it to the point where it can be used as a daily OS. Asahi Linux is developed by a thriving community of free and open source software developers. So this is a native version of Linux that will run on your M1 Mac that you can select from the boot picker selection screen. And when you're not using it anymore, you can boot right back into macOS. Now let's take a look at the requirements of Asahi Linux. If we scroll down here, we can see any M1 MacBook Pro and M1 Mac's machine. And these will change as new versions of a M1 Mac come out. For example, the Mac Studio was just released. We have to be worked into the OS, and that will be supported later. You will also have to have macOS Monterey 12.3 or later and logged in as an administrator user. You must also have at least 53 gigabytes of free space to run the installation. You also need a working internet connection, as the installer will download 700 megabytes to 4 gigabytes of data, depending on which OS you select. So what we're going to do here is we are going to select the Asahi Linux desktop, which is a customized remix of Arch Linux ARM that comes with a full Plasma desktop and all the basic packages you need to get started with a desktop environment. It includes graphical first boot setup wizard, so you won't have to dig around and change your settings or create a first user. So now we're ready to begin. All we need to do is copy this command because it's going to download everything from the Arch Linux website. We're going to copy this command here, then we're going to go over to our test box machine. This is a 2021 Mac Mini running macOS Monterey 12.3. Before we begin, you know what I always say, make sure you back up all your data. I've run this test before and it's run wonderfully on another machine, but if something goes wrong accidentally, all your data is safe. So if I've already backed up all my information, so we're ready to go here. So let's copy that command and paste it into the terminal. So we'll do Command V to paste that command, and there's our curl command, and all we need to do is hit enter. And there we go. It's already checking the version and downloading the files needed to get started. So now it says the installer needs to be run as root. Please enter your administrator password to begin. So we'll do that now and hit enter. Welcome to the Asahi Linux installer. This installer is in an alpha state, and in the future it might be on a full public release. Make sure you're familiar with the documentation at alx.sh/w. Let's hit enter to continue. By default, this installer will hide certain advanced options that are useful for developers. You can enable expert mode to show them, but we're not going to do that. So we're going to hit N for no and then hit enter. Now it's collecting system information. Now it's saying, okay, we have to dual boot the system to install Asahi Linux. How do you want to set up the partitioning on your Mac? So what we can do is we can open up Disk Utility on the Mac to take a look at what we have available. So on this particular Mac, we have a 500 gigabyte SSD, and we are using 125 gigabytes of space, macOS and system files. So we can use maybe 20 or 30% of the drive to be able to use Asahi Linux, because we're going to test it out and see how it works. So when we look at the options here, it shows us all of our drives here, including our Macintosh hard drive and the system recovery. Do you want to resize the existing partition to make space for a new OS, or quit without doing anything? So we are going to resize, so we're going to hit R and then hit enter. So it says here, you can enter a size such as 1 gigabyte or a fraction as much as 50%, or the word minimum for the small allowable size. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that we want to be able to take up 30% of the drive. So what it's asking us is to enter in a new size for your existing partition for macOS. So that's why they say these first parts are macOS. So we want to say, I want macOS to have 75% of the drive. And I'm going to put in 75%. And that will leave 25% for Asahi Linux. So we'll hit enter, and it's saying the resizing will free up 123 gigabytes of space. Note, your system may appear to freeze during the resize. This is normal. Just wait for the process to complete, and we'll click Y for yes. And there goes the resizing, and we'll give it a little bit of time here, and we'll come back when it's finished. Okay, the resize is complete. We'll hit enter to continue. Now it's collecting the partition information. Now it's saying, what would you like to do? Would you like to install the OS into free space, resize the existing partition, or quit without doing anything? We would like to install because we already resized. Click on F. Now it's asking us which version would we like to install. We've already decided we're going to click on number 1 to install Asahi Linux Desktop. So we'll click on number 1 and then hit enter. How much free space should be allotted to the new OS? So we will click on Max to use all the available free space. And then it says the new OS will be allocated to the 123 gigabytes of free space. Enter a name for your OS name. We'll click on enter to leave the default. And now it's going to download the package information. As you can see, it's set up the system volume, the data volume, and the pre-boot and recovery volume. We'll give it some time to set up that and we'll be right back. Okay, all of the partitions and installation files have been moved over. Now all we need to do is to continue the installation, you'll need to enter your macOS admin credentials like we had to before. We'll do that now and then hit enter. Now it's setting the new OS as the default boot volume. We'll give it a second here. Okay, tells us the installation was successful. To be able to boot into your new OS, you will need to complete one more step. Please read the following instructions carefully. Failure to do so will leave your new installation in an unbootable state. Click enter to continue. When the system shuts down, follow these steps. Wait 15 seconds for the system to fully shut down. Then press and hold down the power button to power on the system. Basically what we're doing is we're bringing the M1 Mac into its recovery mode or the boot picker mode so we can see macOS recovery, macOS, and Asahi Linux. Release the power button once it says entering startup options is displayed. Wait for the volume list to appear and then click Asahi Linux. You'll briefly see a macOS recovery dialog, and if you're asked to select a volume to recover, choose your normal macOS volume and then click on next. You may need to authenticate yourself as the macOS credentials, and then once Asahi Linux installer screen appears, follow the prompts. Please shut down your system. We'll hit enter here. And now the system is shutting down. What we're going to do is switch over to our capture card here. We've already waited about 15 seconds. We're ready to power up the Mac by holding down the power button. You can hear the chime. Keep holding. Okay, we see our options. We see our Macintosh hard drive and our Asahi Linux. Excellent. This is exactly what you want to see. We're going to click on Asahi Linux here and then click on continue. We see the boot screen like it mentioned in the instructions, but don't worry, it's going to go right into recovery and we'll finish the installation there. Okay, we're in recovery now. Now the Asahi Linux installer is in the second step phase here. Now it's saying that you'll be prompted for the login credentials 2 times. Please enter your macOS credentials for the macOS that you use to run the first step of the installation. Click enter to continue. Okay, now we can enter in our password for our admin user and then click on enter. Now the local policy is updating in progress. Please wait. Okay, what we are doing now is setting our secure boot into permissive security mode. I want to explain what that means before we continue. What's with those scary security warnings? You're in the second stage of the installation after the first reboot. The installer needs to put your new OS into permissive security mode in order to boot a third-party OS kernel. This only affects the OS that you have just installed. Your existing macOS install is not affected in any way. Unlike Intel Macs and platforms such as Android, Apple Silicon Macs keep a separate security state for each installed operating system. This means that there is absolutely no detrimental effect to macOS. You can continue using all its high security and DRM related functions such as File Vault, iOS applications, Apple Pay, Netflix 4K in tandem with the Linux install. If you are concerned about the data integrity and the confidentiality of your macOS volume, we recommend enabling File Vault. This will make sure your macOS data is entirely inaccessible to other OSs without logging in with your macOS credentials. So now that we know what we're doing, we can hop back over to the install. Okay, we will click on yes. Now we need to type in the system volume owner of the user that we set up on this system. That's the administrator. So we know who that is. Test, hit enter, and the password. Okay, installing the boot object is done. Wrapping up. The installation is complete. Press enter to reboot. And there it goes. There's our chime. Look at that. Asahi Linux boot icon along with a verbose boot. This is really exciting. And here's the Arch Linux bootloader. We can just leave it here or hit enter and it'll automatically boot. Here we are. Welcome to Asahi Linux desktop setup. This program will ask you a few questions to set up Asahi Linux on your computer. First, type in your language here and then click on next. And you can type in your location here. Now it says which kind of keyboard you use. Click on next after you select it. Now it says what you would like your name to be. We'll type it in here. And what's the name of this computer? We'll leave that the same. And you can change your password here. And then click on next. Now the summary of the keyboard and location are set up. Let's click on setup. And there it goes. It's configuring, all done. Click on done. And here we go. We're at the login screen. We'll type in our password that we just entered in. Now we're loading Plasma. And here we are. Now we're on the desktop. How cool is this? So the first thing you want to do is once you're on the desktop, and it looks very familiar, you have your taskbar down here, you have your applications like Firefox to be able to use the internet, but what we first need to do is connect to our Wi-Fi network. So we'll click on the Wi-Fi icon down here, and we'll click on our Wi-Fi, and then we'll type in our password. Give it a second. Now it's connected. We're on Wi-Fi. So now we can go back up here to the address bar and go to google.com. There we go. We're connected to the internet. The first thing we want to do is make sure that there's no software updates for the system. Now keep in mind, as Asahi Linux materializes and matures, some of the fixes that will be with updates, you do not have to reinstall the operating system to get the updates. So let's show you how to do that now. Okay, so now we want to update our Asahi Linux because if any new features or updates come out, all you need to do is run pacman SYU to be able to get those updates. And any kernel updates will require a reboot. Let's go back to our system here and run that. So we'll go to the application launcher here and then we'll go to system and then we will run console. So we'll type in sudo because this needs to be run as an administrator. Pacman -S capital SYU. Enter, and then we'll enter the password. There we go, checking. Okay, and it already sees some packages here, and we will hit on yes, and then hit enter. And there we go, we're already updating. You can see Asahi Linux 5.17 RC7. And this is how you'll update the system when there's a new update out or any new compatibility. And that's it. The update's complete here. Now the system's update, we can actually restart the system here. Restart and then restart. There it goes. Give it a second here. There's our chime. And there we are at the login window. That was really quick. And we're back at the desktop. And we're ready to go. That's Asahi Linux. And the fact that we can get a native Linux distribution install running on M1 without any virtualization with Parallels or VM Fusion is absolutely amazing. Don't forget to check out the Asahi Linux blog where you can keep track of all the latest information and upcoming updates and production notes of the operating system. I also wanted to give a huge shout out to all of the developers that made Asahi Linux a reality, especially Hector Martin, who is the Asahi Linux project lead, and all the other developers that were involved in this project. You guys have done an amazing job, and I cannot wait to see where this operating system goes into the future. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would appreciate a thumbs up or a share. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, you can click on the subscribe button. And also you can follow me on Twitter for the latest Mac news and information. And I also wanted to thank all my viewers and especially my Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome and I really appreciate it. And we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.